What is the point of studying history? What do an Egyptian papyrus, an Inca mural, and a tweet about the war in Ukraine have in common? They are all pieces of history, fragments of the past that we choose to remember, interpret, or ignore. But have you ever wondered who decides what counts as history and what doesn't? Or why we study the past in such detail, as if the future depended on it? Today, we'll discover how history evolved from a collection of legends into a social science with its own method, and above all, why it remains crucial in a world obsessed with the present. History, a human need. Ever since human societies have existed, we've felt the need to remember founders, heroes, martyrs, to remember wars, treaties, disasters, miracles. Every culture has had its way of preserving collective memory. For the Aztecs, it was the Codex. For the Greeks, epic poems. For the Andean peoples, Quipus. And in each case, it was about more than recording. It was about explaining who we are. However, for a long time, that story of the past was more myth than evidence. The stories spoke of gods founding cities, kings conversing with stars, empires arising by divine will. But then, something changed. The birth of history as a discipline. In ancient Greece, two key figures emerged, Herodotus and Thucydides. Herodotus, known as the father of history, tried to understand the conflicts of his time, such as the Greco-Persian Wars, not just through myths, but also through testimonies and cross-cultural comparisons. Thucydides, on the other hand, went a step further. He tried to explain the Peloponnesian War based on human and political causes, not divine interventions, but rational decisions. That was the historical turning point. History was no longer just storytelling. It became a search for explanations. And that search for explanations brings us to what we understand today as history, a social science. What does it mean for history to be a social science? The word history comes from the Greek historia, which means information obtained through investigation. In other words, history isn't invented, it's investigated. But be careful, it's not a science like physics or biology. History doesn't repeat lab experiments or study atoms. It studies human beings in society. That's why it's a social science, because it studies how people live, fight, govern, love, and remember across time. And to do so, it relies on a rigorous method, the historical scientific method. The historian's scientific method. Let's break it down step by step. 1. The hypothesis. It all begins with a relevant question. For example, why did the Roman Empire fall? How did the Industrial Revolution affect women? What impact did the internet have on 21st century social protests? Without a good question, there's no story to tell. 2. Understanding the current state of research. Then, the historian reviews what has previously been said about the topic. They read books, articles, debates. They don't start from scratch. History is also a dialogue with other historians. 3. Searching for sources. Here comes the most exciting part. Searching for traces of the past. Letters, maps, laws, photos, chronicles, archaeological remains. Anything that helps reconstruct the facts. 4. Critical study of sources. But be careful, not every source is reliable. The historian must analyze, compare, question, and discard. Who wrote this, with what intention, when and where? A source without context is a trap. 5. The conclusions. After gathering and analyzing everything, the historian answers the initial question. They connect causes, consequences, processes. They don't just say what happened, but why it happened. 6. Dissemination. Finally, the knowledge is shared in books, documentaries, classes, videos like this one, because history is not a hidden treasure, it's a tool to understand ourselves. The key: interpretation. The most delicate and also most fascinating part of historical work is interpretation. Gathering data is not enough. You have to make sense of it. The same event can have multiple interpretations. That's why two historians can disagree, and both have valid arguments. To interpret is not to manipulate. It's to seek the deeper causes of a process and to understand the motivations of its protagonists. Why did Spartacus rebel? Why did Germans vote the way they did in 1933? Why did the Berlin Wall fall? History seeks to understand, not to judge. But that understanding helps us think critically about the present. What is the purpose of studying history? And now the final question: what is the purpose of studying history? It helps us understand the present. Nothing we experience today, political crises, social media, wars, technological advances, came out of nowhere. Everything has roots. It helps build identity. Knowing where we come from gives us meaning, connects us with those who came before, and makes us responsible for what comes next. It helps us avoid repeating mistakes. As Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It helps us cultivate empathy, studying other cultures, other times, other ways of thinking. Makes us more human. And above all, it helps us imagine possible futures, because history is not just the past. It is also a guide to act consciously in the present. History is not dead. It's alive in every conversation, every choice, every memory we choose to preserve. If you ever thought history was just dates and battles, it's time to look beyond. Subscribe for more content that connects the past with the present. And let us know in the comments, what historical question would you like to investigate? See you in the next video. Until next time.